Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be giving my personal rating of the top 5 cards of the Blood and Iron expansion. And there's going to be a bunch of qualifiers to that, but that is the gist of the video, is the top 5 cards of the expansion so far, at the very least. And first of all, the reason I'm wearing the fancier clothing than usual is I just came from taking graduation pictures. But to clarify before we start taking a look at my list, this is the top 5 cards from the expansion, not the top 5 cards in the meta right now. And also, this is the top 5 cards of the expansion as of the date of I am recording. Obviously, the meta could change. They could nerf some of these cards. They could buff other cards. So if you're looking at this and this video came out 8 months ago or a year from now, it could be entirely different. Also, do not take this as a crafting guide, because again, they could nerf decks. They could nerf other cards in these decks that then will make these cards worse, because this isn't just simply the raw power level of the card. This is also about the current power level of the card in current powerful decks. It's a balance of both, between some of the key cards and some of the best decks in the game right now, as well as just some very powerful cards that are pushing certain decks up into the higher echelons of competitive play. But also, again, there's not been any tournaments, so this is based on my limited testing and my limited seeing what other people are doing and listening in on conversations about the meta so far. So take all of that with a grain of salt. And the last thing I will say is I tended away from picking elites for this list, just because elites tend to be less impactful on the entire metagame unless they counter a very, very specific top deck, or they are a win con in of themselves. Just because, like, elites can be stupidly powerful. And again, elites in this expansion tend to be some of the most powerful individual cards, but a standard is a card that you are 4 times as likely, or 3 times as likely to draw, than an elite, so therefore it's going to have more impact on a wider variety of games. So I tended towards cards on the cheaper side and on the lower rarity side that are proving to be very, very impactful. There is a few exceptions, as we will see. So with all that being said, let's roll the intro and jump into the list.
What a performance there by J King.
J King, full plot armor.
J King is pushing himself into the ranks of the legends.
J King is our world champion! J King 7! What? The back-to-back cards world champion!
Alrighty, so in number 5, I have the 8th Moroccans, or the 8e Marocain. So the 8th Moroccans is the 3-cost 5/5 Throp card for France that reads, when you deploy another unit, your HQ gains defense equal to its operation cost. And this might seem like a bizarre choice to a lot of people, because I think, from what I've seen at least, Throp doesn't seem to be a super popular deck on ladder, at the very least. But if you play it and you build it properly, Throp is a absolute weapon. It's incredibly powerful, and a big part of it is based around these Moroccans, even though it is a special. So I did mention that I was going to lean towards the lower rarities. This is a special, but this is a special that gives so much to the deck, because one of the main issues with Throp is you can often just go under it, because how does it heal? You're just playing out these big statted units. Moroccans offers you so much healing. It offers you the healing to survive long enough to find your victory march, which is then just going to be massive healing again. And it can come out on turn 3 and just absolutely dominate games against aggro decks, because a 5 health unit is very difficult to remove on turn 3. It also has 5 attack, so even if they cheat out something with a Reichsbank, or it survives until like turn 4, turn 5, and they push up a Schutzen or a Winter Regiment or something like that, it's still going to trade out whatever big thing they're hitting this into. And it's also very difficult to just remove with a variety of small units. It is just a very sticky unit, and you don't really have to operate with this. You just play it on 3, and then you just play your units on curve, and it gives every single unit the Glamour Boys deployment effect. And that's incredibly powerful from a 3-drop. You can run 2 of them. I keep this card in my opening hand basically every time I see it. This card is incredibly powerful. It is a very key card to the Throp archetype, and just being, again, a 3-cost 5/5 that offers you tremendous healing if they don't remove it is just incredibly powerful. I would not be that surprised if this card in particular sees nerfs. at some point in the future. But again, keep in mind, not a crafting guide. I'm not saying Throp is the #1 deck in the game and you should go and spend your special wildcards on this card. Not what I'm saying. But if you have this card, you should give Throp a try, because Throp is incredibly fun to play and incredibly powerful with the Moroccans. Alrighty, so in number 4, I have the 113th Schutzen. So it is the 4-cost 4/4 deployment fight target enemy unit standard. And in my card review, I wasn't too hot on this card. I said it seems similar to Tactical Strike. There's situations where it's better, there's situations where it's worse, but Tactical Strike is not a card that has seen a lot of play, so unless the 4-attack deck is very powerful, I didn't think this card would be that good. And I am perfectly fine to admit that I have been proven pretty wrong. The 4-attack deck is not that amazing. It's not bad, but it's not that amazing. But the Schutzen on its own is just a very powerful card, and it's been seen effective play in a variety of different decks, because as it turns out, there's just a lot of low attack, difficult to remove units in this game, especially by turn 4. So oftentimes, it's if you're hitting this into a signal regiment, it is a 4-cost 4/4 deal 4 damage. If you're hitting this into a swordfish, it's a 4-cost 4/3 deal 4 damage. It turns out that very often this is way better than a Tactical Strike. It is just Tactical Strike with a body if you're removing anything with low attack, or even just hitting anything with low attack. And that is really good, because just currently in the meta, there's a lot of low attack things. I was sort of picturing a meta where there's a lot more sort of 4 or more attack things and 4 or more health things on the board, and this is coming out sort of like a mid-rangey card, and it's often just trading 1 for 1, and is that really the best thing you can be doing? Well, it turns out this card very often 2 for 1s, sometimes even 3 for 1s, and that's very, very good from a standard. Also, a very key card in the meta right now is the 1/2 Smokescreen Veteran unit for Soviets, and again, this can remove that, and sometimes this removes it very crucially right before their big tank turn, so it stops them from drawing 2 cards. This card is just an absolute beast in the meta, and I definitely underestimated Schutzen the first time I reviewed it. And as a standard, this card's really, really good, and, you know, if you're a brand new player and you have limited... And you have a limited amount of wildcards, not limited wildcards, but a limited amount of wildcards, Schutzen is honestly a fine card to consider spending your standard wildcards on if you're playing anything with Germany, because this card is a beast. Alrighty, number 3 on my list, and this one might catch some people off guard, but I am putting Duty Bound. So this is a card that, again, in my initial review of the card, I wasn't super hot on. I saw it as very similar to Diplomatic Attaché, maybe slightly better in certain situations, maybe slightly worse in certain situations. Well, it turns out Duty Bound, something that I caught in my video, that as I was reviewing it, I was like, wait, maybe you can play this in air. And then I started to talk about playing it in air, and then I thought, well, you know, actually, the more I talk about it, the more this card seems like a pretty decent air card. Well, it turns out this is more than a pretty decent air card. This is an absolutely insane air card. And I know everybody's playing Commandos right now, but if Commandos ever eats a nerf, or if the meta eventually techs enough behind Commandos for people to do different things with Britain, I think a lot of people are going to switch very quickly to Britain, Japan Air with 4 copies of Duty Bound, because this card is amazing in Britain Air. And I haven't had the opportunity to try this card out in other decks, and I haven't really seen this card tried out in decks beyond Air, so I can't really say currently how universal this is. Like, is this good enough to play in Jagro? I have my doubts. Jagro has a little bit different card draw system. You don't just simply have these convoys that unconditionally draw you a lot of cards. You have to be a bit more lower to the ground. You have to be running a lot more units to guarantee frontline control, to guarantee your expansions, to guarantee your draw. So it makes running Duty Bound a little bit harder in a deck like Jagro, but in Air, it's amazing. And if you've played cards for any amount of time, you know that a card that is amazing in Air is an amazing card, because Air is just an incredibly powerful deck that is so difficult to put down in the meta, and Duty Bound just makes that even harder. On top of that, you can run the recently returned Aichi with Japan ally, so it's not like Duty Bound is the only thing Japan has given you. It's given you air superiorities, and it's given you Aichi on top of Duty Bound. So Britain, Japan is an absolute threat, and Duty Bound is insane in it, because really, as it turns out, just being able to give a buff to one of your 1-cost air units on turn 2 and then attack with it in the same turn is incredibly powerful. We saw that with For Freedom, we saw that with Claim the Skies, and we're seeing that with Duty Bound. And then once you play the first duty bound, every single duty bound after that point is just a good card. And if you can get up to 3 or even 4 your 4th duty bound in an air deck, it's absolutely insane. It gives you a ton of burst potential. So many games I have won on air where my opponent had a really good start. They were playing some anti-air tools. They removed my board. I'm playing from behind, and then I do Wellington duty bound to duty bound, and it's the duty bound for 3 and then 4, and then I hit them for 11. And it's really easy to bring your opponent to 11 health with air, and then Wellington duty bound to duty bound, 5 credits if the Wellington's free, and you're hitting your opponent for 11 if you've played 2 duty bounds already. And then obviously Britain has the convoys and the Sincerely Yours, and depending on how much draw you want to run, you can add in research, you can add in MI5. There's a lot of draw. Plus, we get Monty back, so that's even more draw into Brit Air. Very, very powerful card in a very, very powerful deck. Then in number 2, I have the Calliope. And again, this is a card that in my initial review, I thought I didn't think it was that good. And then I hit upload on the video. And then I thought about it a little bit more, like as I was editing and uploading the video. And the more I thought about it, I was like, wait, actually, this card can guarantee remove 2 1 health units in the front line. It guarantees removes a 2 health unit in the front line. Or it just guarantees 2 damage to a unit in the front line if you're then trading with something else. And that's incredibly powerful, on top of the fact that it is a 2/4, so it's very difficult for your opponent to remove. And even if you're not operating it for 2 cost immediately, just sticking it around so that it can operate when you need it to makes it very difficult for your opponent to play out their hand. And on top of that, it is a Sherman, so it's going to gain, it's going to be able to be played cheaper, and it's going to be able to gain Blitz with the fighter that reduces your Sherman's cost and gives them Blitz. It's going to be able to get buffed by the infantry that buffs your Shermans by +2/+2, and it's a standard, so you can run 4 of them, which increases the odds that you're going to have it on board for giving it Blitz or buffing it if you're playing a dedicated Sherman deck. But even outside of a dedicated Sherman deck, it's just a very, very good on-curve play for any US deck that is trying to fight for early game board control. So, with all of that being said, Calliope, absolutely insane card, and again, it is a standard. Again, would not be that surprised if this card sees a nerf, and this card is really just kind of evergreen. You can play this in frontline, you can play this in much more aggressive decks, you can play this in any artillery-based decks, you can play this in Sherman decks, absolutely. And even, I've been experimenting a little bit with US ally and US main control decks, and Calliope is turning out to be just a solid option in those. So again, this being a standard rarity card, it is incredibly powerful, and it's very easy to get your hands on. If you haven't gotten your hands on them already, try out the Calliope. You will not be disappointed. And this card is just very, very, very impactful on the meta. And I feel like once we see sort of commandos, the commandos flow start to recede a little bit, and we see more decks coming around, I think we're going to see a lot more of Calliope. But even now in the commandos meta, Calliope is pretty good into commandos, because if your opponent plays a commando raid, you can guarantee kill both of them if they aren't hit by a cup of tea with Calliope. So if they commando raid, you just simply target the rightmost commando, and it is guaranteed to deal 1 damage to both of them, since it will die. And then, yeah, it 1-for-1's commando raid, and gives you the 2/4 artillery on board on top of that. So really, really good card in the meta right now, and just a really, really good card in general. I find it difficult to imagine a world where this card is not going to be insane. And now we get to our honorable mentions, and I will start with the aforementioned Commando Raid. If you've played any amount of cards since the expansion dropped, I'm certain you have seen quite a lot of this, because this is probably the most popular card in the game right now, or at the very least a 3 of in the most popular deck in the game right now, which is Commandos. And the reason that this is in the honorable mentions category rather than on the top 5 list is this card is not actually a Blood and Iron card. This is I think it's is it a covert operations card? However, it was one of the cards that was buffed with the Blood and Iron patch, which is why suddenly everybody is playing Commandos, because actually Blood and Iron had 0 Commandos cards explicitly. There was no cards in Blood and Iron that have anything to do with Commandos beyond just being orders. However, Commando Raid is just a completely broken card, which I would be shocked if it's not nerfed within like a month or 2. There was counterplay to Commandos, but again, very, very powerful card, absolutely meta warping at the moment, but again, not a Blood and Iron card. It is simply just warping the post-Blood and Iron expansion meta right now, However, not a Blood and Iron card, which is why it's in the honorable mentions, and that is the same reason why this man right here, Monty, is also in the honorable mentions. Monty was brought back out of the reserve pool and nerfed in the process, however, is a very potent card in Brit Air, it's a very potent card in Commandos, it's a very potent card in every single British deck, because this is one of the single best cards in the entire game. You just run this in every single deck that you can run it in. There's literally no reason to not run this card in your decks. It is ludicrously powerful. However, not a Blood and Iron card, so it is in the honorable mentions. Now let's talk about some actual Blood and Iron honorable mention cards. We have Black Prince, and here it's an honorable mention because this card is absolutely as insane as everybody thought it was going to be. This card is ludicrously powerful, and you throw this into a lot of British decks. However, it's here for two reasons. One, it is an elite, and this list is talking more of a lower rarity cards that are going to have a larger impact just because they're played more often, they show up in more games, and Black Prince is an elite. And then the other thing is, right now in the current meta, there's not actually a lot of Black Prince being played because the number 1 and number 2 air decks that I'm seeing is Britain Air and Commandos, and this card is playable in both of them, but it's not an auto-include, and I see a lot of players running both of those decks without the Black Prince, and that's just because you're doing other things. You're trying to fill up your own support line with both Air and Commandos, and so playing Black Prince, which doesn't really have synergy with the rest of your deck, is another slot in the support line. It's also expensive, and Commandos and Air are both sort of very low to the ground, low curve decks. So it's not seeing a ton of play in the meta, however, absolutely do not be mistaken, this card is insanely broken. And then my other honorable mention, which might seem a little odd to some of you, is the 1st Grenadier Regiment, because honestly, this card is incredibly powerful. This card is ludicrously powerful, but you just can't really fit it into anything that you want to. So the effect on this card is one of the most powerful effects we've ever seen in the game. This card can single-handedly destroy decks if they do not have an immediate answer for it, and it's very difficult to have an immediate answer. It's not impossible if you're trying to attack around it, but it's not very easy for a lot of decks to have an immediate answer, and you can run it in a variety of styles of decks. It's not like it fits a very specific archetype. The only issue with this is its Polish ally French Exile, and there's no Polish ally decks in the meta right now, at least at the top, and there's the only French ally decks in the meta right now are either Mill, where all of your French slots are filled with forced to draw cards and healing, or it's Throp, and then this technically is a Throp card, but it doesn't really have synergy with the Throp deck at all. It's like Throp is like one of the only archetypes that you kind of don't need this effect in. So all in all, it is an incredibly powerful card, and I would be shocked if it never sees play ever. However, this just isn't the meta for it right now, so that's why it's on the honorable mentions list as one of the most powerful cards of the expansion, but it's just currently in the meta right now. I can't justify putting it on my top 5 list because it's really not seeing that much play. Now, drum roll please. What do you think the top card of the expansion is? Go down in the comments right now, predict it before I reveal it, because honestly, it is a standard card, and I think I've mentioned it in this video, but I haven't shown it yet. So the big reveal. My first card on this list, what I think is the most impactful card from the Blood and Iron set right now, is 12th Guards Mechanized. So 12th Guards Mechanized is an incredibly powerful card and an incredibly popular card. This card is just being run in a variety of different tank decks. I've been experimenting with this card in turning it into tank sub-themes of existing archetypes. So I've tried to play Soviet Control with a tank sub-theme just to run 12 guards as a bit of a draw engine. I've played self-damage with a tank sub-theme because of the recently buffed SU 5-attack tank. It draws, it also self-damages you. This card just naturally fits into a lot of different synergies for Soviets. It fits into synergies with Germany, with the 4-attack theme. It fits into just what cards you're running already with US, with the M10s and the Hellcats and the Shermans. So this fits into the Sherman deck, this fits into just a US-Soviet midrange, this fits into a Soviet-US midrange, this fits into a Soviet-Germany midrange, this fits into a German-Soviet midrange. this fits into so many decks, and it is incredibly powerful. It is basically like a one-cost convoy with a body. Now, obviously, it's not that simple. However, if your opponent can't interact with it, and a lot of decks can't interact with this particularly easily, this does turn out to just be a one-cost convoy with a body. And that is huge. That is absolutely huge. And Soviets have just never really had a card like this. Like, the closest thing I can even begin to compare this to would be like Lesser of Two Evils, back when supply chain could go to 0. Now, obviously, it's not quite that much card draw, but this, on top of just like any other amount of card draw, like 22nd Infantries, Jaeger Regiments, Bloody Sickles, Shermans, whatever it is that you want to add on top of this, it just means that you're never going to run out of cards in like 90% of games, whereas previously Soviets would run out of cards in 90% of games. So yeah, this card, hugely impactful, and I feel like this card does need to be nerfed at some point. Does this card need to be nerfed next month? Or whenever the next balance patch is? I don't think so, because honestly, the types of decks it is pushing are decks that we haven't really seen before, or if it's archetypes we've seen before, it's with nations that we haven't seen before, and it's just playing cards in a new and exciting way. It's playing cards in a fair way. The card doesn't revolve around crazy credit cheating decks. It's not revolving around uninteractive order combos. This is just sort of very, very... It's cards played in a fair way with a ludicrously powerful card. Like, this card on its own is not super fair, but it's being played in a fair deck that's playing other fair cards in a fair manner, and I think that is perfectly fine for cards at the moment. So I'm happy with this card being arguably one of the best cards in the game right now. And, you know, do I want to play 2 years of 12th Guards Mechanized? No, not particularly. This card should be tuned down at some point, but I don't think that we need to be in a hurry about that. But in case they do nerf it, get your hands on 12th Guards Mechanized. It is a standard. It's very easy to get to it. And then just put in some 4 or more attack tanks and have fun. It is a very fun card to play with. It's even a fun card to play against, in my opinion. And yeah, it is creating an interesting meta if you can get into a game with or against these tank decks and try to avoid all of the commando spam that's going on right now. So, with all that being said, that is my top 5 cards of the Blood and Iron expansion so far. Let me know if you agree with me. Let me know if you disagree with me. Let me know if I change your mind on anything. Now, obviously, a lot of this list is very personal. I also tried to take cards from a range of decks, and also I mentioned the caveats of why I was leaning away from elites and leaning a little bit away from specials, and also why I'm not counting Monty or Commando Raid. So with all of that, let me know your thoughts on this video. Let me know what decks you have been playing and are having fun with in the Blood and Iron expansion, and you can expect more Blood and Iron expansion videos from me in the future, including a top decks of the expansion. That video is in the works and will be coming out at some point in the next week or 2. So you can expect that in the future, and if you want to catch that and are not currently subscribed, subscribe, and I will see all of y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.